Welcome to the Founder Experience, where we're charting the unpredictable waters of startup ventures. I'm Nathan Williams.
And I'm Alex Gutjahr. Yeah, so today what I want to discuss is what to look for when you hire someone. And the reason I find this interesting is when you as a founder usually bootstrap a company, you have to surround yourself with experts, right? Or people who know a certain topic ideally better than you do, right? Initially, you all do it by yourself, but then at some point, this does no longer work, right? So you have to bring in people. So I want to discuss what is it that you look for when you hire someone, and how do you hire for roles where you may lack the expertise to figure out, okay, are they a good fit, right? I give you an example. If you're a founder with no tech background and at some time you have to bring someone in to do tech, how do you figure out whether they are a good fit? And what are generally the traits you would look into or that you're looking for when hiring someone? And likewise, what are things that you don't care that much about when finding someone?
Oh, man. There's a lot in here. The first thing for me, I find I make the most mistakes when I hire more senior people.
Why is that?
I find that because it's harder for me to judge whether someone who's a subject matter expert and someone who's a bit more senior in their career is actually good, right? Like, because I don't know their field. And so I've made so many mistakes because I hire people who look good on paper and who come with very good recommendations, but may be very good at navigating the politics of a company, right? And looking good, but they don't necessarily know their stuff.
Yeah.
And it's hard to judge that. It's and that's the reason I think that bigger companies will do 3 or 4 sets of very specialized interviews. But when you're a small company, I can't do 3 or 4 sets of highly specialized interviews. I'm not an expert in that. And for that reason, I'd much prefer hiring juniors and interns. I can tell immediately a junior and intern if they're going to be good or not, because I know what I'm looking for. And generally, if you get someone who's good as a junior or an intern, they will grow into the role you want them. This is not always possible, right? If you're starting a chemical plant and you need a senior process engineer, then you need a senior process engineer. So you have to know what to look for with a senior process engineer, but you can't just hire a junior and hope they grow into that role. But just in terms of, in general, for a general position, it's easier to train people in there. And so what you look for are all the soft skills, right?
Which one?
The soft skills. So
yeah.
Are they curious? Do they want to learn? Are they friendly? Do they fit the team culture? Do they show some sort of inclination that they find what you're doing interesting, right? I often will give this advice to people that I speak to who are like, well, how do I get a job in a startup? How do I show this? And often they'll be coming out of school. They'll be, new graduates with their bachelor's or their master's, and they want to get into tech startups. And I say, well, why do you want to get into tech startups? Oh, I found it super interesting. I say, well, do you have any projects outside of school that demonstrate you find that that's interesting?
Yeah.
Right? Because that's rare. It's very rare. But if you, for example, started a podcast about startups and started interviewing people, that would show that you find it interesting. If you're trying to be a programmer and want to be a junior programmer for a tech startup, and you have side projects that you built on your own, that shows a lot more than I programmed this for my class when I had to, right? Because with a junior, showing that you're interested means that there's a higher likelihood that you'll be curious about a topic, and a higher likelihood that if you like the work or like the company, that you'll stay with it.
I agree mostly. So I agree it's harder if you're looking for, or if you're hiring for senior roles. These people are usually much better in selling themselves, right? And they have more experience in getting a job. So it may be harder on your end because also, as you are most likely not a subject matter expert, it's harder to ask the right questions to see, are they like, do they just look good on paper or do they know their field? And I also like what you said, looking for soft skills or kind of proxies that give you more insight. And I like what you said. I usually refer to it as proof of work, infamously borrowed from the blockchain world, it's still, I like that because you cannot easily fake that, right? If you have a track record of published podcast episodes, or
Hmm.
of like a GitHub profile with repositories dating back a couple of years where you've done things or where you contributed to open source. Like I'm mostly thinking about tech related jobs here, but it might be the same for a designer, right? If I'm saying, okay, what does your portfolio look? And they have a nice portfolio over at Dribble or somewhere else. This gives so much more insight because again they cannot just make that up on the fly, right? It's there already. It's kind of it's it's persisted. So I like that proof of work analogy because that's what I'm looking for when hiring someone. I would just say for the at least for the initial roles, I'm usually not looking for juniors. And it depends on how you define junior, right? Because it's a fuzzy term. But usually I try to find people who have worked 1 or 2 years anywhere just to get a sense for how working feels, right? Because in university, etc., I feel like there's a mismatch what you're getting taught and how the real world operates. So I usually prefer working with people who have seen a company from the inside, learned how to communicate, etc. And then it's that sweet spot 2 years onwards, right? And I'm not saying I'm not working with juniors or interns, but usually I'd prefer to hire for the senior or 2 years plus roles first, and then have interns, etc., in these special departments, right? Because it would be hard for me to take care of them as at least initially when you know, okay, you have to scale, your time is limited. So how can you delegate or scale the company? And then if you hire interns, they take more time to train, which is fine, right? But it's usually not the time that you have, at least initially, if you're bootstrapping in and just trying to try putting out multiple fires at once. So that's why I'd say it depends. But I usually start with a bit more senior roles initially.
I think I think for me, I've always seen myself as an educator at heart, even though I'm as a founder by profession, and so that's probably one of the reasons I tend to gravitate more towards the more junior roles because I like working with people that I can train up and that I can show the right way of doing things. And it doesn't mean that I can't work with seniors. It's just the what I find is that when people are sort of established in their ways as well, that they may be less open uh, to this type of learning. And I think that as a founder, like in a small company, when you don't have as many resources, one of the trade-offs that you're going to make in not knowing how to hire properly or not having a fully developed hiring process, like maybe 9 interviews like Google or something, is that you're going to have higher churn rate. So you'll have more people that you bring on, maybe they're not the perfect fit hires, and then they leave for whatever reason. Maybe you let them go, or maybe they leave on their own because they know they're not a fit. But either way, you end up having a higher churn rate. That is expensive for a company because you have to go through all of the work to hire them. Then you pay them for a while during the probation period, and then they're off, and then you have to find someone else. And these, but this is par for the course, right? Like as a small company, unless you've got experience in how to do that, then you will have a higher churn. Um, And I find that, and that's one of the reasons I find I have a much lower churn with juniors. But one thing that I have learned is, first of all, it's hard when you're first interviewing, especially if you're a bit of a people pleaser,
Mm-hmm.
like so many of us tend to be,
Yeah, guilty.
guilty. Um, that you want everyone to feel happy about it, that you don't want to be too hard on people when an interview is stressful. But at the same time, someone told me the best predictor of future performance is past performance. So you have to use You have to use phrases like, tell me about a time when, right? That's a good one. But also, the hard part is trying to know what you're looking for. What are you like it's like you don't even know what questions to ask because you don't know what you're looking for. I need a software guy, I need a sales guy, right? But what am I really looking for? I'm looking for someone that I know I can work with. Okay, what does that mean? Oh, I need someone who's competent. Yeah, well, what does that mean? I need someone who has done this before, someone that can make sales or make software without alienating the rest of the team, and so someone who I don't have to tell 50 times to do the same thing, someone who gets me. Those are all very vague qualities. Like those are all elements of soft skills that are very challenging to test for if you don't know how to phrase it. And that's why this can be so much of a challenge. Looking for someone who's excited about a topic, I find is so much more useful than looking for someone who is just purely knowledgeable, because if they're excited about it, if there's something wrong, then they're going to figure out how to do it on their own. They're going to be excited to find the answer, right?
Yeah, I think that there you touched upon one of the traits that I think are super important, which is ownership, which is hard to test for initially. So, and as always, this depends. But for when I hire for engineering roles, which is also much harder with AI, but anyway, um, there are a few things that I look for, and there are certain traits that you can test for before you hire them, and then there are ones that you can only see after you hired them, right? And this is why I still like doing kind of coding challenges. Not because I care so much about the code that comes out, but I'm testing for other things that are proxies for how they work. Right? I try to give it usually a very narrow definition of what a coding challenge is about. And then I usually ask the people, what do you think how long it's going to take you? By when can you deliver it? And there I can test for their ability to come up with realistic estimates and deadlines. And then also, I usually let them set the deadline, right? Because they have an interest to speed up the process, but I'm not there and telling them, look, I want this coding challenge solved by the end of tomorrow, because they also have jobs, etc. So I usually ask them, okay, what do you think about when you have it? So they set their own deadline. And then I check, okay, do they meet their deadline? Do they miss it? And also how they communicate with me in the process, right? I'm usually there to answer questions. This is also what I tell them. And this is also, by the way, one of the other traits where, and it goes towards the curiosity you mentioned, or the are they excited? If they ask a lot of questions, and what kind of questions they are asking, right? This is a huge indicator, as opposed to someone like when I'm in an interview and I ask, are there any questions? And people be like, no, I know,
No,
okay.
red flag.
Well, that's a bad thing, because you got my time, right? You got my attention. You can ask any question that you want. I take time to answer everything. And if they have no questions, I feel like, okay, you don't really care. But for the coding challenge,
Absolutely.
it just finish that. The challenge is, I see the communication, and I also see, do they go beyond of what I asked them for, right? I usually don't say write tests, for example, but I always want to see tests. I mean, I appreciate it, right? And since they set their own time, they have to consider all these facts, right? And if I then see the code and it has just one commit with a message like work or stuff, one commit message, no tests, no documentation. I don't ask for that explicitly, right? But I people who care do these kind of things, because again, if they don't do during a coding challenge where they set the time they have available, why would I assume they would do this in a work environment, which is much more stressful and time pressured, right? So these
Yep.
are this works for engineering, and it probably looks different for other roles, but this is what I try to do to gauge or read between the lines, not just the coding solution, which of course also has to work, but everything that happens beyond just the code.
What I find sometimes what used to be a challenge, I've gotten better at identifying this, is discerning between someone who is genuinely excited about a topic versus someone that is trying to say they are in order to get the job. And one of the biggest indicators I found is that it is not very useful to me if someone says, I researched your company and I love it. It's got the best mission. I want to work at your company because of this mission, because it's doing good in the world,
Hmm.
regardless of whether we are or not. That's not helpful. And if we're a great company and are excited about that, that's not a reason for me to hire you. That's a reason for you to work with me. That's like your benefit is that you get to work with this company that you're excited about, right? Your company's making a difference. I want to make a difference with my work. Yes, that's your reward. but but what's more interesting to me is when they're interested in the particular topic. And it doesn't have to be the topic of the company. It can also be the topic of the role. So, for example, if they come to me and they're like, you know what, I love project management. I love organizing things. I love managing projects and solving intricate things of timings and making sure everything is on track. Beep, beep, beep. That's great. That's the type of thing that you would look for. Or I love the topic of your company, right? Like I've been researching into this field for a while, and that is also interesting because you could work for me or my competitor, but I know that it's the topic itself that interests you. And then it's my job at that point to make sure that my company fits to your interest in the topic and that we've got a fit between what you're interested in and the working environment, right?
Yeah, and then that's like when you find these people, how do you then win them over? Like if you see that someone's a good fit, and is excited about the topic, then at some point I have this in interviews where I at some point I know, okay, it's a really good fit because based on the conversations, on the questions asked, um, and sometimes I'm even bypassing coding challenges, right? If I feel like this person is on so many levels a good fit because I like if I spend 20 minutes and it goes by like this, and we talk about in-depth things, or that person gets straight to a problem that we're facing, right? It's rare, but sometimes you talk with someone and they just ask 2 to 3 questions, and then you arrive at a point where you feel like, yeah, we're trying to solve just that right now. It's good that you're asking. That that's usually when, okay, we can bypass everything else. I'm willing to take the risk and try this, right? And then let's get you on board to not lose that energy and that momentum. And then it's, yeah, that's one, except as I said, it's rare. But every now and then you find someone, and then I try to really speed it up and win them over and say, look, I'm being very open in the interviews, and I tell them, look, I want to work with you. We'll figure it out, but I can say that up front, right? I don't like politics or wasting time. And then they say, oh, we get back to you. If I already know I want the person, I'm like, it's a great conversation. I would want to work with you. Are you in, right? And they still have time to think about it. But yeah, I'm not trying to play this, as I said, politics or doing process or whatever. I'm just telling them bluntly that would like to work with them, and that worked
I've done
quite
that.
often.
I've done that. I've found people where it's like, yes, this is obvious. I want to work with you. I've even had people apply for positions. Maybe I shouldn't say this out loud, but I've had one person apply for a position where there was no position open. And after a few minute conversation, it was clear I needed this person to work with us, and that was like years ago, and they're still with me today. And it's you could tell immediately, perfect fit for the company, and we'll find you a role, right? But I think that the number one indicator of that, first of all, is the questions that they ask. If they are asking questions and getting to the heart of the problem, it's like immediately, okay, they know what they're doing, they're insightful, we got to bring them on board. And then to get them excited, it's really how you treat them. It's money, but it's not just money. It's how do you treat them during the process? How do you respect their opinions? What sort of control do they have over their work environment? And are you the type of boss they want to work with? And I remember hearing once someone tell me, no one ever quits a job, ever. People
Yeah,
quit a boss.
yeah. That's probably true. Um, I just want to finish on the final trait that we briefly touched upon, which is really the ownership, and that's one of the things that you only see after you hired someone. But people who take ownership, and I think that goes hand in hand with the excitement, right? If they get straight to the core of a problem you are facing, and then you give them the space to dabble with that problem and they take it, right? There are many people who are not willing or cannot take ownership, which is fine. But the ones who take ownership and run with it and just say, okay, leave me here, I figure it out. These are usually people who stay with the company longer, given they always have interesting challenges to solve, right? Once you've solved that may probably be a problem. But if you give them the room to explore that and the ownership to dabble with the problem, I think that's really good. But you only see that after you hired someone. I would throw that in as one of the traits that I find super interesting.
You remind me of something I remember hearing Alex Hormozy say, if you're familiar, right?
Yeah.
And whether or not you like him as a personality, this particular thing stuck with me, which is every company has a Sarah in accounting or whatever, where they say, oh, if only I had 7 Sarahs or 50 Sarahs. And do you know what the difference is between a small company and a big company? Is they have 50 Sarahs. That's the only difference, is they've got 50 Sarahs. And how do they get that? Is that they don't hire mediocrity, and they just don't make a place where people who are sort of medium and who aren't that interested thrive very well. And that they get the 50 Sarahs and they go and they hire until they get them. And that's what makes the difference.
I see. Let's maybe, I think that's a good intro into this topic. I think we can at some point continue with onboarding, right? How you do the onboarding for someone and how do you then measure performance over time, which is also interesting, right? Because we also touched upon firing someone if you have to do this at some point, but there's so much in between, right? If you found the right people, how do you keep them around, how to measure performance, etc. So I would like to explore that in the future as well. That's it for this episode of The Founder Experience. If you enjoyed it, do us a favor, hit subscribe wherever you are listening, whether that's Spotify, YouTube, or your favorite podcast app. If you've got a second, leave a rating or a review. It really helps. And you can find more episodes and behind the scenes stuff on our website, founderexperience.fm. And if you've got feedback or business ideas that you want us to talk about, shoot us a message at hello@founderexperience.fm. We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for hanging out. We'll catch you next time.